Good morning and welcome to Scarborough Community Alliance Church Midweek Devotion. Today I'm going to be sharing from the book of Mark, chapter 3, verses 1 to 6. And I'm going to be reading from the Amplified Version. It says, Again Jesus went out into a synagogue, and a man was there whose hand was withered. The Pharisees were watching Jesus closely to see if he will heal him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. He said to the man whose hand was withered, Get up and come forward. He asked them, Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do evil, to save a life or to kill? But they kept silent. After looking around at them with anger, grieved at the hardness and arrogance of their hearts, he told the man, Hold out your hand. And he held it out, and his hand was restored. Then the Pharisees went out and immediately began conspiring with the Herodians against him as to how they might put him to death. This is one of the few episodes of the gospel that tells us that Jesus was angry. In fact, if you read the Gospels, you will find that the Pharisees were constantly watching Jesus and attacking him. Pastor Victor just taught us about one of them last week during the Sunday service, and his name was Nicodemus. Well, he was a little bit better than this group. We learned that the Pharisees were experts of the law of God. So how can a group of people that are experts on the law of God and yet be so far off to recognize that Jesus was the Son of God? Well, the Pharisees were very concerned about being right. God commanded us to keep the Sabbath. We are right and this fellow is wrong. How can he come from God if he doesn't even keep the Sabbath? They were so consumed about being right and being the moral authority that they lost sight of the love of God and his compassion. They became proud and their hearts were hardened. Pride is a unique sin. It actually may not look bad. In fact, Jesus likened the Pharisees to whitewashed tombs, very nice looking from the outside, but full of decay in the inside. Brothers and sisters, we too can easily harden our hearts and give in to pride. Because pride is fueled by our ego, our own pride easily creeps up because unfortunately, you and I, we love ourselves and we want to make ourselves look good. So let us guard our hearts from pride. Just in the previous chapter of Mark, chapter 2, it tells us that Jesus had called Levi to follow him. And then after the calling, there was a feast, and Jesus was eating and drinking with tax collectors and sinners. Of course, the Pharisees were there too to accuse Jesus. Jesus associated with sinners so that they would have a chance to repent and change their ways. It seems that it was easier for the sinners to repent, but the proud seems less able to repent. Psalm chapter 10 verse 4 says, In his pride the wicked man does not seek him. In all his thoughts there's no room for God. Pride so fills the self that it pushes God out and it has no room for him. I often think of myself generally not to be a very proud person, but being good at my work makes me feel proud of it. Working in the central office where many people come to seek for advice for the appropriate guidance and guidelines, I normally feel that very proud that I'm right and I give the right advice. But in occasions, I'm not correct, and that makes me feel very upset. This just happened last Friday. It always happens when you are tired, or you are in a bad mood, or maybe you are just simply hungry. So I was exhausted after finishing a big project, and after I submitted it to my boss in the nick of time, I realized that it still has some mistakes. So I was disappointed and sad and upset. All that hard work, and then what will my boss think? Then at that time, someone replied to one of my emails correcting the facts that I have stated. And I was angry. Well, he was right. I made a mistake. But then, I was so upset that I wanted to, reply and say something rude or make up with some argument to argue that I was right. Yes, I was strongly tempted to do so. I didn't do it. And then I was depressed. I felt that I wanted to quit my job. And, I was depressed. And when I went to bed, I even said to God, "Oh, God, I want to go to heaven. Heaven must be better." Now, this sounds really silly in retrospect. Now that I'm calm, I'm going, "Oh, what a silly woman." I really thank God that as a child of His, He speaks to me and I have His words and I can listen to Him. So the following morning, after I rested a little bit and I was able to do my devotion, I asked God, why is it that I was so angry and so upset and I seem to have overreacted it so much? Well, God told me, plain and simple, it was just your pride. After so many years of being a Christian, I would have thought that I was better at it. But no, each time, this happens, I fall into it. So God encouraged me, and many Bible verses that warn against pride came to my mind. So through prayer and the reading of His words and reflection, I acknowledged that I was wrong, and I, recognized and I decided that I was going to, acknowledge with my colleague that I was wrong and just move on. And after that, I felt at peace. I felt restored. I felt really much better. So, brothers and sisters, guard your hearts. Do not neglect your daily encounter with God. Let us reflect our actions and thoughts in prayer and in the reading of His Word. Pride goes well with our fallen nature. It is easy to assert and to say that we are right and to defend ourselves. We need to constantly, daily restore Jesus into His throne in our hearts. And so when your heart, when you hear a prompting and a warning in your heart, do not harden, but respond to Him in obedience. So thank you for watching and listening, and have a blessed week.